Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name's Roxy Darling and I post videos of the things that I create. In this video, I have used a glass orb, some polymer clay and tinfoil to create the body of this fantastical creature that began as a sketch with a really long tail in a bird bath. I used sheets of rolled out polymer clay to wrap around the body, and I also used that to adhere the glass orb as the head. I used glass beads with wire through to adhere it to the body because it would stick better than regular adhesive. I also did that with these glass flatback crystals as well. I did not use clay for the tail. For the tail, I made it all out of beads, adhered to a chain like a really thick necklace. So for each bead, I strung through a headpin wire. I used some snips to cut off any excess wire that I did not need. And I used half round, half flat pliers to roll the wire to form a bail. I use half round, half flat pliers due to having only round nose on each side can pinch the metal. After I do this several hundred times and adhere it to a chain, I have created the really long tail, finished the head and the neck area, and decide I want to start creating the wings. The wings were made by dividing the clay into 4 separate sections. You can see here I've already baked the bird, created the tail, a little foliage side, seashell buddy, and one of the first wings is baked and it's a bit lumpy, but I'm going to cover it in details. With some rolled out polymer clay, I use a flower shaped cutter to cut the shape out of the clay and roll the petals out with some texture using a toothpick. I curl the ends and use a ball stylus to press in the middle to continue to give it a 3-dimensional effect. I'm now making the roses. I make those by rolling tiny little cubes into little spheres that I will smush flat and continue to wrap around a small sphere in the middle. With each petal, I'll press one side down and leave the other side open so I can slide the other petal in to overlap. I continued this method until I reached the size of the rose that I was needing. At some point, this gets a little too difficult for me to handle due to its small size, so I do insert a toothpick into the bottom to help me hold it a little better. I continue this until I get to the size of the rose that I prefer, and to get it to sit flush to the wings, I take a pair of scissors and I cut off the bottom part of the rose so it's flat. I do this with several different colors and add some iridescent powder to some of the flowers. I adhere them to the wings after the wings have been baked and the roses and flowers have been baked. When I put the finished wings next to the bird and wanted to begin pouring the resin in the bird bath, I realized that the bowl I was going to use was very confined. So I went to the thrift store and I found a glass cake stand, and I taped a template of a design I wanted to trace with some glue and colorful sand, and even threw in some micro beads to give some detail to the bottom, and started adding the bird and its tail to pour in the resin. So this was after the first pour, and it filled up about halfway, and this was after the second pour when it started getting this really cool effect, and I started adding in some of the foliage I created. this is what it looks like after 2 resin pours. And yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with it, but I think it still needs some more detail, if you can believe that. So here I am adding some matte Mod Podge to reduce the shine that is on the polymer clay. After the Mod Podge is dry, I take some acrylic paint and start adding some colorful detail to the tips of each feather. This does take between 2 and 3 layers of acrylic paint to get the desired opacity. Now on to the pale pink. Here you will notice, even though the video is sped up 8 times, I believe, you'll notice that my hand shakes. For anyone who does have shaky hands, don't worry, just lean your hand up against something to give it a little more stability. I think here I'm leaning my hand up against the bottom of what's the bird bath, and I will use my pinky to rest on the wing. I just say this because I don't want people to feel like they can't do something if their hands aren't perfectly steady. Just like the green, I did several coats of the pink before I moved on to an antique gold. At this point, I realize that I'm loving this gold and that I want to continue the gold throughout the rest of the piece as a really nice detail to tie everything in, especially in this collar area, because it was the first area that I was kind of learning how to manipulate the polymer clay, and it's not quite as refined. As you can see, the petal in the very back to the left, it's just got more texture and refinement than these in the front. So I'm adding this gold detail kind of to just not bring so much attention to how clunky, chunky, funky these petals are. I also carry the gold details to the back of the bird because this area was looking very, very pineapple booty to me, and pineapple booty is just not what I'm going for, so I'm going to try to add this gold detail in hopes to remove the pineapple-ness of it. Now to add gold details to any areas that I think need a little pop of color or detail or light. Here I'm prepping some beads that are plastic to adhere them to the top of the bird's head in the mohawk kind of area. I wanted to add some height, texture, and color. I was unable to add these prior because I baked the bird, and now that the bird is all baked, I'm just going to continue to prep the beads like I have with the rest. Now to use hot glue to adhere everything. Right now I'm just filling in any gaps or adding them in a way that I think is pretty balanced. I go in with the tall sprigs and then I go back in with the pink football shaped, I don't know, beads. And now to continue the same process with green beads and filling in any spaces with the tail. Before I pour the final layer of resin, I'm painting some green foliage, leaves, however I kind of feel at that moment. I'm just having fun. But I know I'm going to paint them a little bit darker green than the top details because once I add that resin, I want to really accentuate the depth. I realize that once I pour more resin in, these really pretty pink glass beads might disappear. So I top everything off with an opaque pale pink and gold bead detail. I'm gluing everything on with some super glue. I also add some kitsch little foliage beads with some super glue before I pour, and I also found some sand that I'm just going to style with my little brush before I pour this resin, because this will be covered with resin, and I knocked one of them over, and that's okay. I am adding some watered down school glue to the sand, which made it look like cream of wheat, and just gluing some extra foliage in there. I think I obviously did not make this. This was for a diorama, but look how cool this is looking. You can see through it. It's giving like an optical illusion, and I just thought it would be really cool to start gluing some of the foliage underneath to look like it was growing out from underneath. The natural sand was just too cream of wheat for me, so I took some pink sand, some micro beads, and some crystals to make some prettier, more fantastical sand that I'm now adding with some school glue, and I'm pushing it back so it's really nice and clean before I pour the last little bit of resin in there, in which A lot of this will be embedded underneath and will darken pink. And now to pour the final layer of resin. Unfortunately, my hands, are a little shaky. Here I add some resin mixed with pink powder pigment and some glitter. And this piece is finished. For those of you who have stuck around to the end, I appreciate that so much. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you're interested in seeing more of my work to come, please subscribe. Since this piece took so much longer than I expected, I decided for the final photo shoot time that I should turn on the party lights.